Okay, and we're back. So I didn't want this to be a 30-minute long video, so that way you could have a break. All right, so let's move. We're talking about the ovarian cycle. So we've talked about how oogenesis is occurring. We've talked about how the egg is going to go from a diploid cell to a haploid cell, from having 46 chromosomes to 23, and that's occurring in a follicle, which is developing as the egg is developing as well. And so all this is called the ovarian cycle. And so there's a follicular phase of this cycle, ovulation, and a luteal phase. All right, so let's go through these and talk about what's going on, and we're going to show you what this looks like on an ovary as well. So remember, in the follicular phase, okay, this is when the follicle is developing. You have a primordial follicle that's going to become a primary follicle. So that's going to have an ova with a single layer of cells all the way around it. So this is like a squamous-like cuboidal type epithelial tissue. That's what it looks like. And the oocyte's actually going to get bigger during this stage. So you're kind of forming a protective nursery around this egg, and the egg's going to get bigger. Then in the follicular phase, the primary follicle is going to become a secondary follicle. And now you're going to have multiple layers. You're going to have a stratified. So secondary, it's got a layer to it. And these are called granulosa cells, and they form around the oocyte. And these granulosa cells and oocytes, they're kind of talking to each other. They're kind of helping guide each other's development. They're gap junctions where they're kind of physically connected. So this is what these kind of look like. So we've got this model, and you're seeing, where's my numbers? Somehow I've lost some numbers. So here are your the primordial follicles are going to kind of be around the outside when you're looking at the over these small things here. All right, so these are your primordial follicles. So here you have the oocyte inside this primordial follicle. You really can't see a layer of cells around it very well. So a primary oocyte and a primordial follicle. So be prepared on your lab test also to be able to recognize, these primary oocytes and primordial follicles. That'll be part of your lab test as well. So now as you're developing in this follicular stage, remember that oocyte's going to get bigger. So look how much bigger it is. This is the cell, and you have a single layer of cells around it. So a primary follicle. So a primary oocyte, a bigger primary oocyte, okay, with a single layer of cells around it in a primary follicle. All right, so these are going to be what you're seeing right here. So a bigger egg with a layer of cells around it. Now, what you're going to see now, that follicle is going to continue to develop because we're in the follicular stage. So it's still a primary oocyte. The oocyte's not really doing anything, just the follicle's getting bigger. So you can see that there's 1, 2 layers. You're getting layers around this egg. So now it's a secondary follicle. So this would be what you're seeing kind of here and here. So these are primary oocytes and secondary follicles. So your oocyte and follicle numbers don't necessarily match. You can't say it's a secondary oocytes and secondary follicles don't necessarily go together. Okay, so don't think 1s and 1s and 2s and 2s go together. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. I wish it did. All right, so what you're seeing here is a secondary follicle with a primary oocyte in it. All right, so now this secondary follicle is going to continue to develop, and it's going to become a late secondary follicle. And you're going to get even more cells and more connective tissue, something called theca folliculi and more granulosa cells. And these are going to start making estrogens. And so this is where some of your estrogens are going to come from. And you're actually going to form another layer around the oocyte called a zona pellucida. Okay? And you're going to start to accumulate fluid and form that antrum. All right, so here we have this late secondary follicle. It's not mature yet because I don't see a big antrum like I do here, but you can see it's starting to form. Okay, so this is that late secondary. You're starting to see a fluid-filled antrum, just starting. So here's my oocyte, but do you see this clear ring around it? It's like it's sitting in a clear, that's the zona pellucida, which means basically clear ring or clear zone around the egg. So zona pellucida is forming around that egg, and you're starting to see the antrum form. Okay, you're also starting to get these theca cells. This connective tissue is starting to form around the follicle as well. All right. Now, this late secondary follicle is going to get a fully formed antrum, and we call it a vesicular, mature, or Graafian follicle. So this is the full-grown, ready-to-go follicle. So this antrum is going to become bigger, and you're going to stick the egg out on a stalk. All right. It's going to have a crown around it. All right. And this is when the primary oocyte completes meiosis 2, and now it's a secondary oocyte. All right, so you've completed meiosis 1, and you've got a secondary oocyte. So this is what this looks like. So here's your antrum, your fluid-filled antrum. Okay, here is your oocyte. Here, this clear zone is your zona pellucidum, and you have a corona radiata. So it's like a crown. It's like this layer here, like a crown around the cell, is called the corona radiata. All right, so now you've got this secondary oocyte that's ready to be, it's a secondary oocyte, ready to be ovulated. So you can see it's full of fluid. It's trying to bust out of there. The egg's ready to go. We've kind of pushed the egg out on a stalk. We're ready to pop that bubble and send that oocyte out into the world. Okay? All right, so now we're at the middle of the ovarian cycle. We have ovulation, which is when the ovarian wall ruptures. So literally, it's like popping a zit. It pops out of the ovary and expels that secondary oocyte with its corona radiata. So think of that as kind of like a shell around the egg and into the peritoneal cavity, hoping. So here's the ovary. Here's the uterine tube with the fimbriae, trying to grab those eggs. And because this is, like I said, it's kind of like popping a pimple, it has to pop. And so some women actually feel ovulation. They can feel that pain of that popping of the ovarian wall. And that's called metal schmerz. Metal means middle, schmerz means pain. So middle of the month pain, that's German. So some people actually can feel metal schmerz when they ovulate. Every once in a while, sometimes an ovulation will release more than one egg. Maybe both ovaries release eggs, or one ovary releases 2 eggs. And so you have 2 separate eggs that are released and then fertilized by a sperm. That's a fraternal twin. Okay, so 2 different eggs, 2 different sperm. An identical twin is with 1 egg, 1 sperm, and during its early divisions, it divides into 2 babies. That's an identical twin. Okay. So that's the difference between fraternal twins and identical twins. Again, we'll talk more about this with pregnancy. So again, here is our secondary oocyte with its corona radiata. It's little, think about it as an eggshell wrapped around the egg, going out to protect it as it goes into the peritoneal cavity and hopefully being caught by the uterine tube. So this is what this would look like if you had an image of a ruptured follicle. So we've ovulated, so now we're in the luteal phase. So now the egg is trying to make its way through the uterine tube and waiting on a sperm to get there. But we're not really dealing with that right now. What's still going on in the ovary, because we're talking about the ovarian cycle. So we're in the luteal phase. So this ruptured follicle is going to collapse, and that antrum is going to clot with blood. All right? And you're going to get the cells that remain, those granulosa cells and thecal cells, they form what's called a corpus luteum. And luteum means yellow, so it's a yellow body. And the corpus luteum secretes hormones. It's a hormone maker. It makes hormones, progesterone, and some estrogen. And we're going to talk about why that's important. It has something to do with helping you maintain being pregnant. All right? If there's no pregnancy within usually about 48 to 72 hours, that corpus luteum is going to degenerate, and it's going to turn into a corpus albicans. And albicans means white, so white body. And basically that's a scar. So if you can take an ovary and you can actually, if you were doing a pathology, you can see how many times the ovary has had a ruptured follicle by looking at this little scar tissue. If there is a pregnancy, okay, if there is fertilization, the corpus luteum will remain active and it will continue to make hormones for about 3 months, because it takes 3 months for the placenta to fully form, and then it takes over. It'll start making hormones as well. Okay, so that's the luteal phase. You're turning that follicle into a hormone producer. So here's ovulation. Here is the corpus luteum. Here is a fully formed corpus luteum. Maybe you've got a pregnancy, so it's really ramping up and churning out those hormones. And then when if there is no pregnancy, if it's going to basically turn into a corpus albicans, it'll degenerate, and you'll get this corpus albicans or this scar tissue. So here's my corpus luteum forming into a larger corpus luteum and then degenerating into a corpus albicans. And that's it. So that is the ovarian cycle. So in the next video, we're going to talk about the uterine cycle, and then we're going to talk about those together. What's happening at the uterus, what's happening in the ovary at the same time, and how those work together in menstruation and ovulation and potentially pregnancy, and then we'll get into pregnancy and development. Whew, women are complicated. All right, thanks a lot. I'll see you in the next video.